like take away career from it. Let's just like look at our lives because we are whole human beings. We're not just worker bees. Um, that our purpose is the same, and that purpose is we are humans and we are coming here to have a fully human experience.
Hey everyone, welcome back to another episode of Coaching for Millennials. Today we have a special guest on the show, and this month is really showcasing a lot of different stories. And I'm really excited to bring this person on the show because they're a first timer, but also they're one of my really good friends. So without further ado, I'm going to say welcome, Kristyn Emmer, to the Coaching for Millennials podcast.
Oh, thanks, Jose Miguel. It's so fun to be here. And I
Yeah,
always love
yeah, I'm
chatting
so
with you.
excited.
Yes.
I love chatting with you too. We know we can talk for hours, and we were talking right before we hit the record button, but I'm excited for us to share this space, this time, and for people who listen to the podcast to hear the stories that we have because we obviously go back 2 years, but we have very similar paths in our careers. So I'm going to give you an opportunity to introduce yourself, tell people a little bit about yourself and where you're from and what you do, and then we can jump into some stories and sharing stuff.
Yeah. Well, thanks so much, Jose. Appreciate it. Yeah. So, as Jose Miguel said, well, I think it's important to know first, I'm first a mom. I'm secondly, I Marie Forleo once said she called herself a multi-passionate entrepreneur.
Yes,
And I
that's my
have not
girl.
resonated with something so much than when she said that. And not necessarily that I'm solely an entrepreneur. I do hold a 9 to 5 type of job, but do my other passion work outside of that. So I'm constantly dreaming things up, doing things. But I think primarily my role in the world, or one that I have been holding, is one of a coach. So I started my career as a career coach, really. And this is where, of course, you and I share a lot of similarities, was in the career services space on university campuses. And so I spent about 10 years doing all various different roles in career services and really learning the world of helping people figure out what they want to do in the world. And secretly, I think part of the reason I went into that was because I was just so fascinated with so many things and thought so many career paths were amazing and interesting and intriguing, but I can't do them all. So I can just live vicariously through a bunch of other people who do them. That's my theory. It's not been proven, but so I did that for a number of years. And then I had the opportunity to actually move overseas. So my husband and I moved overseas. And when I did that, went through this whole like big life crisis of what on earth am I doing with my life and myself? And also went through a bit of a health crisis slightly before that. And so when I was over in Scotland, I decided, with lots of my extra time, because of course life there is just slower. There I had a lot more free time. I thought I'm going to become a health coach and figure out, like, first of all, A, what was happening in my body and what did I just do? But B, also helping other people walk through similar journeys, because I felt like mine was so convoluted and confusing, and I learned so much that I thought could be useful to other folks. So I got trained as a health coach, and as I was over in Scotland, I realized, as I'm like sitting in rural Scotland, looking at the farm fields and walking along the beach and thinking about all this health stuff, I started getting really intrigued by how our environment, and specifically how agriculture, impacts human health. And so I just started exploring that question. I just thought, I'm going to ask myself, where does agriculture and human health intersect, and see where I end up. So I did that for about 5 years, asking myself that question, and just learned so much about our food system, our agricultural system, our health, workers' rights. I mean, there's like so many things that are tied into that when you start asking, where does agriculture and human health intersect? It's not just like in the quality of our food. It's in so many different ways. It's basically like how we relate to one another, how we relate to the planet, and it gets quite like existential the more you dive into it. And so yeah, so I kind of have this background of career coaching, health coaching, and just really a lover of people's journeys and what makes us all human and why we choose to do the things that we do, is a really, really fun space for me to dive into.
I love that. And I love that you reference Marie Forleo. I talk about her often on the podcast. I've been a huge fan of hers for like the past 20 years since I can remember. So I think that's such a unique story. Obviously, everyone has a unique story, and that's what makes us different. But the fact that you weren't even sure why you went into career coaching or career development or career services in the first place, and the fact that you felt like you wanted to do all these things and ultimately realized that, oh, I can watch other people do it and still feel the same level of fulfillment. That's awesome. I never thought of it from that framework. I think for me, when I started to see myself doing group coaching, and that's kind of how I really fell into this. It was really happenstance. I was an undergrad. I was going for student teaching. I realized I don't want to be in a classroom with a bunch of seventh graders teaching Spanish and then never remember the language. And then fell into teaching college students and realized this is so much more fun.
Hmm.
But exploration pieces of where college students are going. So to me, it was more of like, I love this and I want to do this for the rest of my life. Just kidding, not really for the rest of my life, but did it for 15 years.
Yeah.
So the journey to health coaching and career coaching combined,
Yes.
I love this idea of how our bodies and our the food we eat are impacted by how we make choices in our careers. Is that correct?
Yeah. So, okay, this about 2 years ago, I was listening to a podcast. Dr. Zach Bush is the name of the doctor, and he said something that was so prolific, so profound to me. It was one of these moments, like core, it's a core memory. It's gonna be like one of these things that I look back on in my life like 40 years from now and go, oh yeah, it was when he said that it just shifted everything for me. Essentially, what he was saying was he was looking at our bodies from a more cellular perspective. And basically, all that means is instead of looking at like a system or an organ, you're looking at it from like even more specifically a cell. And he said, each one of the cells in our bodies has a specific purpose. A skin cell has a very specific purpose being a skin cell. A liver cell has a very specific purpose with a liver cell. Same with a brain cell. I mean, eye cells, like all of them have a very specific purpose. And if each one of your cells, the cells in your body knows what they are supposed to be doing in your body, they actually know what their, he calls it self-identity is, then you will know what your purpose, your self-identity is and what you are supposed to be doing in the world. And that made so much sense to me because it's like, yeah, absolutely. If my like trillions of cells are all resonating in a frequency of, I know my purpose, how can I, as a whole being, not also be resonating with that type of energy of, I know my purpose? So that was,
So wait,
yeah,
pause right there. There's a lot to
there's so much.
digest with what you just said, right? You just said that every organism in our body is a cell, and there's a reason these all these cells have a different job.
Mhm.
How does that connect to purpose and identity? Those are two very different
Yeah,
things. And if our cells are doing their job, then our purpose and identity is much clearer. Is that correct?
yes. It's basically saying, I know what I'm doing as part of the whole. And I think we all sort of have some kind of drive, right, to contribute to something greater than ourselves, to like participate in what humanity is doing, right? And so in when you look at this from like a cellular perspective, oh, if I'm if I'm a cell, let's imagine I'm one little cell. If I'm a cell that like doesn't want to participate in what the whole organism is doing, I go rogue and then I start to become, I shrink. And that's what happens with cells when they don't know their self identity, they shrink, they become dehydrated. And this is Dr. Zach's like progression here, as he's explained it and as I've learned from him, is when that happens over and over and over again, what happens to these cells is they clump together and they become a tumor, and that's what we call cancer. And that's no different than what happens if you have a human, a person who doesn't want to participate in what humanity is doing. That's where you get violence and like rogueness that happens in society. Things that go like against humanity's nature is like when people don't understand, like, you have a purpose of being here. You have an identity of like an imprint of humanity. And like those two things are not separate from the cellular level to like the macro type of level, if we're talking about it that way. So
How this is so fascinating because there's a lot of science behind that, that we probably need someone who's a chemist or biologist to
totally.
probably go deeper, and we're not doing that. We don't have that those
Totally.
credentials to even think about. But from the perspective of purpose, because I think that you and I both know the clients that we work with and the people that we encountered back in our career services days oftentimes weren't driven by purpose. They were driven by skills, experiences, and things that they were exposed to.
Mhm.
How does someone who potentially may be at flight risk because their body's not well, how does someone identify and understand that their purpose is being caused by all this toxicity maybe in their body?
Mhm.
Like there's a trigger there, right?
Mhm.
That's one. And then the second piece is to it, like, how does someone really uncover what their purpose is when it comes to their identity?
Yes. Okay. So I'm going to answer your second question first, and then I'm going to work
Okay.
backwards here. I have a controversial opinion about purpose because sometimes when I hear like stuff about purpose, I get like this cringe in my spine, and I'm just kind of like, because I believe that we all actually have the same purpose in life. Like,
Okay.
take away career from it. Let's just like look at our lives because we are whole human beings. We're not just worker bees. Um, that our purpose is the same, and that purpose is we are humans and we are coming here to have a fully human experience. What that looks like, how we want to live out our fully human experience, how we want to live out our aliveness of being here in this type of body, in this shape and form, can look 1,000 different ways. And that's what we get into when we talk about career. Is like, how do you want to express your aliveness? How do you want to go into the world and utilize the temperament, the personality, the skills, the drives, the passions, all those things? How do you want to use them in the world? And the where why I've landed on this is because, one, I don't think there's any such thing as a dream job, because dream job is like just slightly out there. It's perhaps unattainable. And so often when we find ourselves in our dream job, we find actually like maybe this wasn't everything that I thought it was going to be for me. And then all of a sudden we're disappointed. When actually it's maybe a really great way for you to express your aliveness in that moment in time. But your career, like your life, your whole trajectory will take lots of different forms of what expressing your aliveness looks like. So I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, it doesn't make sense, and I think it's really interesting you say that from so many different perspectives. One obviously is the this idea that we all have the same purpose, is to be here on this earth, to be present, and to live. Which that's very simple. There's no complexity behind that. The career piece is the part that I think makes it a bit more complicated,
Hmm.
but it's what sets us apart from being different.
Hmm.
How do you bring that back to how our bodies?
Yes. So here's like the most beautiful interweaving of career and health. And why I'm talking about this as like a long trajectory is because, like, right now, I can say, okay, I'm in great health. Therefore, I feel like I'm perceiving things in a particular way, and I'm able to like be in my community more. I'm able to like go after the opportunities I want to go after. I'm able to create. I'm able to do all these things. Well, eventually we will all run into health roadblocks, hurdles, journeys of some kind. And just because you're going through that does not mean you are less alive, but it might mean that you have less capacity to do the things that you thought you were doing before. And the way you express that aliveness will have to look perhaps different in that journey. Now, there's a couple of things though. I want to back up here. I also, before I get into this, want to put a big ol' asterisk to say none of this is here to blame anybody about where they are in their health journey. Like that's not what my goal is. Um it's to just think through like the ways that we live in our bodies impacts what we do in the world. It's not better or worse or right or wrong or whatever. Like we all get to, you know, determine what we want to do with that. So I'm just going to put that out there. Now, when we think about like health, and I think everybody can maybe imagine or think about a time when they weren't in great health. That might be because you had like severe gut health issues and you were like, weren't able to eat more than like six different varieties of food. That was my story. But it could also be like you got the flu or you got like the stomach bug. You know, you can think about these in different ways. When you have the flu, it's really, you're not thinking about how can I like contribute and utilize my skills in the world. Um, you're thinking about like, I'm trying to like get myself healthy and like, um, you know, here and up back on my feet. And it's similar when we have gut health issues. Now, when we look at like the world around us, there's so much kind of working against our health. Like we live in a lot of toxicity in our modern world. Our food is like quite toxic. Our water is. I mean, there's all these things, and we could, that's like multiple other episodes that we could do about this.
It's a lot to
And
break down there.
that takes a toll on our bodies. And so if we're not taking care of our bodies, our cells are less able to ebb and flow with what's coming at us in life. And so there is this like really interesting dance between those, because I think on an acute level, the more that we find ourselves, you know, in ill health, the less clear where we're going, how we want to express our aliveness becomes, or it looks perhaps different or limited. Um, and when we are in better health, it's easier to step into those spaces to get clear. I mean, I just like, here's another example. Think about a time when you were under a ton of stress, like everything just kind of feels like it's on top of you, right? Like
Yeah.
it's I'm going to say impossible when you are under that much stress to live into the creative being that you are.
Mhm.
And that's a health, that's related to health. Stress is related to health and the health of our body and how we're moving what's coming at us in the world through our body. Um and so yeah, they're all intricately connected, and we can't say that our bodies and the way that our health is disconnected from what we're doing in the world and how we're expressing our purpose of being alive and having a human experience. So
Do you feel as though our bodies respond to how we make decisions in our career that ultimately impact what is the catalyst to either illnesses, to diseases, to the flu,
yeah.
to I mean, obviously, we all have like stresses in life. And I think the one thing that we probably should kind of go back to when it comes to going like back to basics a little bit is that you spend, 75% of your life working,
Hmm.
and the choices you make early on in your either career or your first job are going to catapult you to wherever you want to go.
Hmm.
And this idea that there's no real dream job, it's just the art of creating time to create resource to live.
Hmm.
How how can someone understand the connection between the fact that your body is reacting in such a way and telling you that your career or your job is not, I don't want to say it's killing you, but you're clearly like sick, you're ill, you're having some sort of response to it. How does someone really understand that? Because I think, I mean, the whole world is fucking stressed out. Let's just be honest. And we're walking,
Yeah.
I don't even know what to call it, but like I have really, really bad ADHD. I know when I'm like doing 5,000 things, I have to say stop. And it's hard for my brain to understand that. That's a mental health issue, but it creates a lot of stress and anxiety in my particular environment when I don't stop doing the 5,000 things that my brain wants to do.
Hmm.
How does someone recognize that for themselves? I mean, that's a
Hmm.
really strong mindset of needing
Yeah.
to carry to be able
Totally.
to do that. And it takes a lot of work.
Yep. Totally. That's a great question because you're right. Like what I'm hearing you say is it goes both ways. And that is true, right? Like your health could be the way it is, not because of your job, but it impacts what you're doing in the world. Conversely, it could be your health is the way it is because of the work that you're engaging in, because of the company you're working for, because of like, it could be a number of different reasons. So I will give you a very clear example. Your body is always communicating with you. I think that is the most important thing to know. So, because you have a headache is not just like a random, oh, I guess I just got a headache. It's a lot of people will say, oh, I didn't get enough sleep or I didn't drink enough water. Ask another question. Why didn't you get enough sleep? Or what is it about being dehydrated? Um, where is that coming from? Keep asking, peel away the layers of the onion there. And because what you're probably going to find out is I'm carrying a lot of stress. If you start to ask yourself, do like some self coaching and really like continue to just go one level deeper. How do you know if it's your job that's causing you stress? If that's the question, well, I think how do you feel on the weekends? Do you feel wrecked on the weekends? Like do you feel like you need to use your weekends to recover from your week? Or do you use your weekends
Mhm.
to like enjoy your time? Like that you get to do what you want with your friends or your family or like whoever you and whatever you engage with when you aren't working. I think that's like a really, really big one. Um, I think it's when you are talking about work or when you're in a meeting, just take like a moment to check in with your body. And when you do
That's a
that, you
big
might
one.
find your shoulders are up under your earlobes when they should not be there. You might find that, like, actually, my stomach is like in knots right now. I might find my lower back hurts. Like, all of those signs, like, again, your body is speaking to you always. So if you're finding yourself going, oh, I have these like weird things happening, it could be because of your job, perhaps. This is quite a few years ago. I was going through a really, really stressful time at work, and my body broke out into a full out eczema rash. My eyes were like
Oh my
puffed
God.
shut. It was so bad. And I decided I was going to take a couple weeks off of work, and it went away almost instantly. And that's like a good I'm not saying that will happen to everybody. Like, oh yeah, all your ailments will end as soon as you like take a vacation or quit your job or whatever that is. Like, I'm not promising that. What I am saying is helping, like moving yourself into different environments and just taking note of how do I feel when I'm either engaged or not engaged in these particular things can give you a lot of information about where your body wants to be and where it feels the most supported.
Yeah. So talk to us a little bit about how you work in your coaching practice to help your clients connect to this whole idea of your body, your health, and work.
Mhm. Yeah. So right now, where I've basically combined all my worlds, right? And that's kind of what we're talking about here is career combining in with health. And essentially what that looks like right now, there's a course that's in the shape of an ebook at the moment. It's called Nourished Work Life. And essentially what that does, it's self-paced and it's essentially walking you through the process of how do you put yourself into environments where health is possible for you, can be possible. And then how does that tie into, therefore, what type of possibilities you see whenever you are in a state of health or when you feel like you are caring for yourself? Um, Many of us live in like the fight or flight kind of space, and we make very different decisions when we're in what's called a sympathetic state of being, that fight or flight state, rather than when we're in a parasympathetic state. That's the rest, digest type of state. When we are calm in our nervous system, that's another whole podcast episode. When we're calm in our nervous system, we make very different decisions and we perceive the world very differently than when we're under stress. And so, essentially, once we can get ourselves into that parasympathetic state, then we can kind of look up and we can see, like, okay, where are the possibilities presenting themselves in my life? And how are we putting those together to create the next best step? So, really, what I am concerned about is less of like, what's your career as the main question, and it's how are you designing your life in a way that lets you do what really matters to you. So for some people, this I would include myself in this. I My current life situation is that having a stable income is really important. And so having that like 9 to 5 stable income is really important to me at this juncture in my life. But I want to have that 9 to 5 be an opportunity that allows me the energy and space and time to be with my family, to pursue the things I love to do, to coach, and to be in these other spaces that I love to be in so that I can express my whole humanness. Because we don't have to just rely on our job for us to express our whole humanity. And so really what Nourished Work Life is doing is helping you design your full life in a way that allows you to do more of what matters, is what I say a lot. Like, do more of the things that matter to you. And sometimes that looks like we give and take in different areas. But on the whole, it's designing in a way that allows you to move in that direction.
I love that so much. It really is. So you're helping people understand how you're almost like their co-pilot and designing what their life could be versus the life that they're living
Yep.
that's making them sick,
Hmm.
essentially.
Totally.
And looking at all the facets of their life, all the different layers, you said peeling back the onion, that can really help them see a more holistic future for themselves that's healthy.
Hmm. Totally. Yeah, that's
That's
integrated. That
amazing.
feels like your life. I mean, I think perhaps if you're listening, or you can think about perhaps someone who you're looking at their life going, you're living that life because someone told you that that was the life you should live, rather than like,
Mm,
what's the one that you want to live? What's the thing that you want to do? And I think there's way too many of folks walking around who perhaps never were given the permission to do what they want to do. Like, or to pursue what they want to pursue, right? Like, we all have opportunities and limitations. Like, I live in a slightly more rural part of Wisconsin. Like, my opportunities look very different than if I lived in a big city, if I moved 3 hours south to Chicago. Like, that would be a very different life with very different opportunities. So yes, we all have restrictions, right? I'm a mom. That makes me that I have different responsibilities and restrictions and things like that, where I can't just like do whatever I want with my time. But that doesn't mean that I have less opportunity. That doesn't mean I should be not living my life to the fullest, right? That's not what any of that means. It just means how do I take what I have and design it to let me do what matters most to me at this point in my life. And that will, again, 10 years down the road, maybe less than that, that will change. And what matters to me in 10 years will be
Totally.
different than it is now. And so this is a continual process. Like, it's not just something we do once and go, I got it figured out. Like, I know what I'm supposed to be doing with my life. It's like right now.
Yeah.
But what about,
Yeah.
and then we'll iterate on it. We'll keep going. We'll continue to.
It's a journey.
It
Yeah.
is.
It's a
Yes.
journey you have to continuously evolve. And I think that that's the same with, life coaching and career coaching. We're not, and I think that also like the world of work has changed and since the pandemic really more than it has ever changed in the last 40 to 50 years. I mean, what we're seeing people do and the opportunities that they're finding is insane.
Yeah.
And regardless of where you are, I mean, you didn't share this and you lived for a year and a half traveling across the United States working remotely because you made that choice and you wanted to experience that for your family, experience that for yourself. That is not something that everyone can do.
Yep.
But if someone wants to do it, you can help them design that type of life to still have all the things that they want with their family, with their career, and make that journey.
Yep. Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
And you know what? Here, when we were doing so, yes, we lived in a van for a while. And during that point in time, it was great. Like, that was exactly what I wanted to be doing. I felt like we were living into our aliveness at that point in time. Right now, though, if you were like, "Do you want to go live in a van?" I'd be like, "No." And that was not that long ago, right? So, like,
Yeah.
what matters to me is different now than it was even just a couple years ago. And therefore, I have designed my life in a different way to allow me to do that. So,
We have to be open to the change that comes to us when it does
yeah.
and listen to our bodies telling us there needs to be
Yeah.
change so that we can actively continue to grow
Oh
and
my
not
gosh.
kill ourselves in the process.
Look, here's my last one line I will say is, I think so much of the stress that we carry in our bodies is simply resistance to what is. And the resistance to, okay, here's our opportunity, like, here's the job that we're in, but it is so stressing me out. But do I have the courage? Or maybe it's less courage. I don't know. It could be a number of different things, right? Everybody's so different. Resources, bandwidth, like, we could go into a number of reasons to make a change. Is it worth it to us? Is that health in my
Mm,
body, is setting down the stress worth it? And that, there's a whole set of questions that I want to start asking. Like, I'm just imagining myself sitting with somebody like in this conversation, and therefore asking, what is that stress protecting you from? What is it serving you? Like, how is it serving you? How is it not serving you? How is it keeping you from different aspects of your life? What's the fear? I mean, there's like so many things.
there's a
Again,
lot.
that is why I get so excited about what I do, is because who we are as humans in our bodies, like, we don't come here as just like a head on a stick. We are fully embodied human beings. And when we show up to work or we show up to our lives, we're doing that with our full selves. Um, and when we don't do that, that's when we come into conflict, and come into conflict in the form of stress. And so, we have a lot of opportunities. We've got a lot of choices, and how we put those together is up to us.
Yeah. Well, this was extremely powerful. I think so much of our conversation is something that either people will find a light bulb go off. It'll be a moment of healing potentially, an opportunity for to look to advice and get the help and support that they need, and really being able to learn how to be treat themselves better. Probably is the best way of putting it,
Mhm.
because oftentimes we forget that the human here is needing more attention. I love this conversation. And you and I can always talk for hours. In the interest of time, though, tell people where they can find you, how they can find what you do and what you're currently working on right now.
Yeah. So you can find me on Instagram or TikTok at Emmer and Earth. And that's a bit of a ode to my agriculture and human health days, that I was exploring that. And again, that they're not different from they're not separate from how we express ourselves in the world and what we choose to do for a career. And so I've kept that name, which is a, you know, different story. But so Emmer
It
and
has
Earth
a strong connection to you. Yeah,
is a very
that
strong
makes
connection.
sense.
So emmerandearth.com is my website. And you can find me, yeah, on Instagram, TikTok, all those spaces. So what I'm doing right now, so I've just launched Nourished Work Life, which I just talked about recently. If you're interested in any of this, would highly encourage you checking that out as sort of a first step. And from there, I do offer coaching, and an opportunity to sit down one-on-one with me and dive into kind of all of these things that we talked about and more, like whatever feels pertinent and relevant to you. And so, yeah, it's really my joy to get to journey with people and offer space to bear witness. So, yeah.
I love that so much. Well, we'll include the links to your website and all your social media on the show notes. Kristyn, thank you so much for
Oh,
this beautiful conversation. Always a pleasure. I love you and I really appreciate your time.
thanks, Jose Miguel. Always a pleasure.
And if anyone has any questions to come with Kristyn, be sure to follow her on Instagram at Emmer and Earth and be on the lookout for more content in the next week. Bye.